Explosions have been heard in southern Lebanon as bombardments continue between Israel and Hezbollah. Up to 60,000 people have already been displaced on the Lebanese side since the fighting began, with thousands more evacuated from their homes in Israel. And fires have broken out at the border. Ali Hashem has more from Alma Ash Shaab in southern Lebanon.
Huge fires has erupted here on the southern borders of Lebanon, mainly in Alma Ash Shaab and Naqoura, the vicinity of both towns. Huge fires, and it's eating thousands of square meters of bushes surrounding these towns. And now we can see the fire inside the town of Alma Ash Shaab. There are a lot of attempts by civil defense forces to extinguish the fire, and calls from officials, from the mayor of Naqoura, from the mayor of Alma Ash Shaab, on the United Nations forces in Lebanon to take part in the efforts to contain this fire. But the fire is very big, and now there are calls on people who are still here. There are only few people left in the border towns, but there are calls on the people to leave for their safety. At the same time, every now and then we can hear cluster bombs exploding. There's a legacy here of cluster bombs since the 2006 war and even before. So it's getting dangerous for civilians, people who can't deal with this situation. Now all these attempts for now are just to contain the fire, not to put it off, because the more we go towards the bushes, the more the blaze is eating everything. It's unbelievable. From Alma Ash Shaab, Ali Hashem, Al Jazeera.
Elijah Magnier is an independent political and military analyst, and he's in Brussels. He's joining us live. So thank you very much indeed for being with us on Al Jazeera. I want to ask you, first of all, about the targeted attacks that Israel says it's been carrying out in northern Gaza. The Israeli military has been very insistent not to put a timeline on the activities that it's carrying out. Do you think that the targeted attacks we're going to see more of? And does that mean that an eventual ground invasion, a ground attack, if it actually happens, will be more limited in scope?
Well, obviously, the Israelis stopped talking about the invasion of Gaza, and they talk now about a limited ground maneuver. This is how they call it, which is reducing the objectives that the Israelis understand that is impossible to achieve to eradicate Hamas from Gaza. Now, I agree with you. We will see more of these forced reconnaissance of small troops, a small unit, going into the border of Gaza and trying to venture a few hundred meters in and leaving after just a couple of hours and taking off-road to test the resistance readiness and to see if there are strong resistance ready for them on different borders and different points, even if the Israelis normally in all their wars never take the main road into the city. Also, it's a way for the Israelis to disperse the resistance effort and give an idea that the main attack could be on this point, could be on another point. This is why it's important for the military command in any war to start a little maneuver on different fronts from different areas to make sure that the other side is exhausted, to test its readiness. And in the case of the Israelis here, Netanyahu needs to give something to the Israeli army that has been waiting for the last 2 weeks at the gate of Gaza in the heat, waiting for the political order to go in, knowing that there is a trap, that is a deadly trap waiting for them in the city. Also, the Israelis want to try and understand if it is possible to create a buffer zone. For that, they need to go into Gaza from different sides and limit their maneuver, keeping in mind that the final objective will never be reached. I remember the former Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who is one of the finest military leaders before he became Prime Minister, said that the Hamas is in the head of the Palestinians and it is part of the Palestinians. We can't eradicate. Now, is Netanyahu going to take this lesson and understand? It seems he's extremely hesitant of venturing into Gaza, particularly that Netanyahu is very well known of someone who is capable of carrying out a little battle for a few days and then shout for a ceasefire immediately. But he needs to give something to the Israelis that are angry and have lost the confidence in the army. And he's also relying on the Americans who are guiding him. And this is why the small break into Gaza for a few hours, going in and out, I remember seeing that many times during my coverage of the war in Iraq between 2003 and 2010.
I want to talk to you about this issue of going into the urban areas. We've talked to many analysts over the last couple of weeks who have been saying there is a very significant difference, no matter how well trained a military is, when it comes to moving into urban warfare. Talk us through what your assessment would be and how that could change the emphasis to some degree if the Israeli troops not only made an incursion into the northern part of Gaza, but actually had to go into the streets and fight.
If they want to keep the target they have set, which is extremely high and almost impossible to reach, to destroy Hamas, is not going to be by an air or artillery bombardment. Nobody surrenders to a cannon or to an airplane. People surrender to the infantry. And for the infantry to go into streets of Gaza, even those who are completely destroyed, I remember in the war in Kalamoun that I have seen in Syria, every single building that is on the floor becomes a trap. And that, regardless the tunnels that already exist in Gaza, the Israeli prisoners that came out told us about it, and they revealed the kilometers under the ground who are well prepared. For the Israeli to go in and set a number of casualties between 500 to 2,500 Israeli army killed and wounded, this is an extremely high number. And I think it is still, in my opinion, very modest if they want to eradicate 35,000 Hamas-resistant militant in the city.
I want to ask you, I was reading an article written by Thomas Friedman in the New York Times. He was suggesting that in order to maintain support for his military action and to be able to have greater achievements when it comes to its military action, Israel could maybe change its focus from its initial stated aim of wiping out Hamas, which may not be achievable, according to some analysis, to getting the captives back. Do you think that changing that focus, albeit perhaps subtly over a period of weeks, would actually be feasible?
I don't think any of the Israelis' objectives have been met in the last 20 years, neither against Hamas or in Lebanon. All the objectives that the Israeli military commanders and politicians set in any of their war, or what they love to call battle between the wars, they all always fail. Now, on the media and on television, they say we have achieved it. Now, look at what's happening in Gaza today. 7,000 people who were killed by the Israelis, mostly children and women. Is that their objective, to destroy Hamas? Of course not, because we see the intensity of the bombardment is increasing. The lengths of the missiles are reaching between 160 to 180 kilometers, particularly today. So Hamas and the Palestinian resistance are constantly sending an invitation for the Israelis, saying, come and fight to us as a courageous army against us, if you can manage to break into the city, but man to man, not with your airplane and with your bombardment that is killing our families and the Palestinian families. And the Israelis understand that. That's why they don't dare to go in, because they know any objective they will set, first, it will be unsatisfactory for the Israeli population. Secondly, it will not be met by the army and the politicians.
Elijah Magnier, we appreciate your insight into this. So thank you very much indeed for being with us on Al Jazeera.